Hey, it's Huck. And frankly, I wasn't going to address this whole Kony 2012 campaign, but after seeing all of the controversy it has spawned over the last 48 hours, I somehow felt compelled to address some of the concerns that have been raised. Well, I'm not going to go into details of Joseph Kony or of the video which I assume you've already seen. But for those of you who have yet to see it or wish to see it again, there's a link in the down bar. There are always those voices, some progressive, some conservative, telling us that we are not the world's policemen, that we have no business involving ourselves in other parts of the world, that there are too many problems right here at home that we can't begin to address with the resources we have at our disposal. There are other voices that are very quick to point out that any help we do offer in this effort will be used to sustain other evildoers and the atrocities they commit. There are even voices that are telling us that this particular non-profit organization isn't as charitable or as transparent as they ought to be. Some of these voices come from the usual suspects, the typical internet trolls who go looking for a popular bandwagon to overturn. But some of these voices come from elite colleges with impressive titles like Assistant Professor of Political Science and Economics at Yale. Wait, didn't George W. Bush graduate from Yale? And some of the voices even come from other organizations and agencies with their own boots on the ground. And perhaps the loudest voice of all, the one garnering much of the attention, comes from a young student in Nova Scotia of political science and sociology who deems this organization, Invisible Children, as somehow unworthy. The student's name is Grant Oyston, and I have a link at the end of this video to some of his criticisms published where else but in an online publication called SabotageTimes. To Mr. Oyston, I say, shut the up, and for once in your life, do something constructive. And to all these other naysayers, I say simply, stop your damn whining. A few of these critics actually think they have everyone's best interest at heart. But do these do-gooders offer a practical solution? Of course not. We know, for instance, that the trolls have no empathy for anyone or anything that doesn't directly affect themselves. Most of these folks have never taken a moment of their time to contemplate what it is they could do to lessen even a small part of the atrocities going on in the world. But they don't hesitate to exercise their mouths, giving reasons for why we should do nothing. How convenient. For others, coming out of the woodwork now to accuse Invisible Children of scamming the public, or telling half-truths, or of propping up, as they deem it, an equally evil and corrupt Ugandan army in their pursuit of Kony, well, there is more to this story than they're telling. Could it be that they see Invisible Children getting all the attention and much of the resources they didn't have the ingenuity to garner for themselves? Could it be that some of these voices have their own agendas, and the success of the Kony 2012 campaign is going to make their job that much more difficult? Then there are the Ron Pauls of the world and other isolationists who feel that we shouldn't be involved in other people's conflicts, or take the absurd stance that this is some kind of white man's burden complex. These are the very same folks who, unsurprisingly, feel that food stamps and children's health initiatives should be abolished. Well, I've got news for you folks. Every bad situation in the world doesn't necessarily entail us involving the deployment of tens of thousands of troops, or day and night sorties for weeks, or for decade-long military adventures. It's interesting and illuminating, I think, that it's these very same folks who criticize America for getting involved in conflicts around the world because of limited resources, who are also the first to criticize those organizations around the world that were meant to help collectively solve just such conflicts. Organizations like the UN, the World Court, or NATO. However we choose to address them, these are burdens that cannot be ignored. Ignoring or appeasing Hitler is really the only example we need to see the consequences of not taking action or delaying that action too long. The genocides occurring around the globe just in the past 40 years are almost too numerous to keep track of. And all because no nation's strategic interest was at stake, or because the media largely ignored it, or because good people were never moved to take action. When millions of lives are ruthlessly destroyed, as they were in the Balkans in the 90s, or as they have been in Central Africa for decades now, humanity itself cries out that we do something. The philosopher Voltaire, I think, said it best when he said, "Every man is guilty of all the good he didn't do." You may disagree with that definition, but if you do, don't ever tell me that you are motivated by some religious belief. Voltaire's words succinctly summarize the central theme and pathway illustrated in virtually any reading of any religious text of any significance. But it is even more than that. If life has any meaning at all, it must start first with how man treats his fellow man, that each life is precious, that we must be, most of all, devoted to the humanity we show to one another. Everything else is window dressing. In this instance, I think Obama's handling of Libya is a pretty good playbook to follow, finding partners to help lift and encourage those in need around the world, without placing too much of a burden on any single nation. The entire Libya adventure cost the United States $896 million. Is that a lot of cash? No, not in the vast scheme of things, not when you consider that it's 1/100th of what we spend each year in Afghanistan. Practically speaking, a cost-effective step considering the alternatives had we done nothing. And while Invisible Children states that no direct funding of the Ugandan government or its military has come from their organization, they don't deny that they are working side by side with the Ugandan military to try to resolve this crisis. While it is true that over the last 8 or 9 years the Ugandan army has seen its own share of shameful conduct, accusations of potential diamond smuggling, of deforestation, of even rape and pillaging, it is worth noting that in no country the Ugandan army has marched in their pursuit of Kony has the Ugandan army been asked to stop its campaign. Most humanitarian organizations, while criticizing Uganda for its successes, have also noted that the Ugandan army is among the more disciplined and well-behaved armies in the whole region. The incidents of rape and brutality are an unfortunate byproduct of war itself. America, perhaps the best trained, most disciplined army in the world, has had its own accusations and convictions in this regard. By aiding and in effect partnering with the Ugandan army, there's a much greater likelihood that such excesses can be curbed in the future, even to the extent that more effective education and pressure can be brought to bear against the anti-gay stance so prevalent in the Ugandan government. But to use these as your excuse to do nothing seems to me a rather convenient excuse to do the nothing you intended to do all along. The reason that Kony is still at large today stems from the fact that, for the most part, enough resources, and in particular the type of equipment needed to track and locate him, has never really been brought to bear, or not been brought to bear over a sustained period of time. And that brings us to those who are upset that Invisible Children only directs 34 cents on the dollar in direct aid to the children and other victims of the conflict. Now you're nitpicking. People can't drop what they're doing and volunteer to launch this kind of an effort. An effective campaign has tremendous costs, and it goes beyond merely attempting to get out your message. Just ask Ron Paul. Invisible Children admits that they direct approximately 1/3 of their proceeds directly to those afflicted. Unlike the other organizations, another third of the proceeds are directed toward their awareness campaign, producing high-quality films which they show free of charge to millions of people around the world, and they've been doing this for 8 years non-stop. They also lobby governments to take action, and they do that successfully. They were instrumental in the effort that brought about military advisors from the U.S. military into the region. Something tells me that Republicans in Congress and President Barack Obama probably did a little homework to make sure this organization was on the up and up before devoting military personnel to the region. But the resources they do devote to the children in this case, and it's been millions of dollars to date, has been used in a variety of unique ways. I hope you will take a moment to check out the official response from the organization to all of the criticism that has been hurled their way. I've placed a link to their official response at the end of this video, and I really hope you'll check it out. In that response, you can see for yourself what form that assistance has taken in the last 8 years. So if you are all that concerned that only 1/3 of your dollar to the Kony 2012 campaign is actually going to the victims, and somehow that just doesn't seem enough to you, a simple solution would be that you should donate 3 times as much. And if that math doesn't work for you, then I might suggest either a non-monetary donation or do a little research and find some other organization working in the area where you deem your money will go further. There are any number of ways to make a contribution to this effort. Not all of them cost money. In fact, there are many ways that you could contribute that would cost you nothing more than a few moments of your time. But I'm going to leave it up to you to consider what those may be. Because frankly, if you're one of the naysayers in all of this, I think you should be free to exercise your rare use of empathy. And I don't want to get in your way. Anyway, I'm Huck. Those are my thoughts. I really am looking forward to hearing yours. Thanks a lot for watching.